Should be.
Sounds good.
I think we should get audio on it. Should be good enough. It.
Huh?
Ours is upstairs.
Can you ask him? The audio's gonna work on the thing.
Does anyone have the pump?
A boy?
I think they're lip on.
6:10. I'm gonna give you another reminder at 05, but 10 you need to be out there.
You know.
We can get upstairs.
That's his roommate.
Oh, Brett. He needs it for the camera. I'm in the slides. Yeah, are you okay with being in the...
Hey, make sure no one comes in this back row unless they're far away. I don't want any noise over here. No,
I am here.
Live stream.
Dr. Evans.
The front rows came to
What is it, Dr. Oh,
the middle row.
sit up for extra credit. Oh, God. Me too. No, that's not like someone said they're here for Dr. Evans. Extra credit, please. Someone extra credit. So dumb.
Do you guys need anything or you good? Do you want me to move these bags to the back?
Where are we putting the GoPro? We're gonna sit down and.
Doesn't he want you to walk around with them?
No, I think he wants us to sit at a different angle, so at the end we have a different angle of the show.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what he said.
Check how it looks right now. Super loud.
How do we turn that noise off?
How do you go settings?
Where's the setting?
I don't know. You can record vertically too. I don't know where it is. It's all good. It's just the one sound.
Oh, Dennis.
Yo, have you guys seen this?
Yo, Dennis and Pooja.
Should I record food? Oh, what's up, guys?
Okay, you guys. No one allowed in the front row or after this half of the back. So come in.
No people at all. If people sit here, it's not gonna block though, I don't think.
No, boys.
Yeah.
Or do you want me to sit there?
If people are trying to sit here, don't let them sit in the first three.
I might hit first three for each row.
Like this. This row or that row, don't let them sit. You don't want them to
We can have them the fourth. After the 14th, we can sit.
Yeah.
Okay, and then here's second. I mean, you know.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 2.
Here, no one's allowed.
This whole row.
No one.
On the stairs. Yeah, I'll come right now. Hey, Sean sent us slides. He sent the slides. Where's Kuru? Yeah.
Well, no.
What do you want to extend it? What do you want to extend it?
Find some angles that are just on it or not.
Like even here? Standing?
Don't stand. No stand. If you want, sit down here if you want or something. Oh, just don't come in the first few chairs in the last row. What's up now? Are you in now? Look.
Yes.
It's this time?
It's time. We got
What? Okay. Actually, one of you guys, can someone open up their laptop?
I left it in the... Mine's right there. Wait, where's
Well, I know his is right there.
Wait, what?
I need someone to go into the live chat and have people check in for extra credit
Live chat? I'll try that.
on the live stream.
So would that be like a full-time job, or how would that work? Okay. Is there a charger outlet?
No, there's one over
in the
here.
middle, yeah.
There's one in the middle over here.
Yeah. Where?
It's underneath. No. Sean sent his slides.
Oh wait, I'll try to put it here.
Just be careful. Yeah, we disconnected. Okay,
I'm talking about Sean Oja.
The GoPros, we can't really use them because the mounts don't work. Okay. So it's just commented. It's just commented. Yeah. We're changing something.
Real quick, the order. I just got hit. So Sean goes after. No, I'm putting it in the order.
Hamza.
All my friends are like, take it.
No, alright. If you guys are gonna sit in this, sit in the middle row. Fill up the middle row. Go all the way to the middle. No. Usually, having a five straight. Okay, sit in the back. Fill the middle row. No front, no back. Yeah. Eight.
Does it take a second to basic calibrate?
I just check the cords on the door. Where's your backpack? Oh, get it.
Set.
Get the charger.
Set. You just replugged it in.
I got the last.
I know, but you have to start because one has to, otherwise you have to.
So I want you to
So you have
on
to
the
go
chat
in.
say, everyone check in here. I want your first and last name. Okay, this is.
Plug it in.
It's not like. It's probably my.
No, just refresh. Yeah. Or hold on.
Yeah, actually, I might do like this. I have to check it. You have it right here.
Do you have You guys know the password?
Reserve signs.
Oh, it's not fast Wi-Fi.
It's fine. I just need to download one app.
Oh, it's not even a download.
Oh, that's like 25 minutes.
Yeah, you know how slow the internet is here?
It's fine, it's fine. Still better than that.
Just need this. There's no one.
Yeah. I mean, you can put it.
I mean, yeah, this is the
Noise.
because like if it's on.
Is that, what were you thinking for volume?
Everyone started checking in right now. Yeah, it's like yeah. I'm just making sure. It's a refresher.
Six, 10, they're gonna go up. 608, yes.
Good.
Give me that 610 we're gonna start, so 608.
It's just not that. That's because I got 2 bars to sprint out. Okay, it's okay.
Well, you can connect to the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi slower.
Slower. Otherwise, trust me.
T-Mobile, it's 2 bars too.
No, dude, I can't even call you for it.
I know, yeah. It's,
I would go higher. Yeah.
so for the GoPros, where are we sitting?
Dude, the GoPros, if you guys want to, someone can sit in the like on the.
In the front is good too. Like, it's good.
Someone can sit on the steps here.
Yeah.
Someone can sit on the other
What
steps.
do I do with people's names?
Nothing.
At the end of the.
At the end, before the live stream ends, I want you to copy and paste everything into a notepad or Word doc or Google Doc, and we're gonna go through it.
Even if it ends, you'll still have to share.
I just want to, I want it back. And then I'm gonna come up to you and we'll. I know. But
It's not going.
So check in.
What I'll do is I'll connect the mic to my camera up there.
Where's the mount?
The mount is just
No, I didn't reach it.
Oh yeah, because you're moving.
I might have to move it.
Do you want to move on the other side? Like,
Give me the mic.
swap?
No, it wouldn't. It would be worse. I'd have to get closer.
We can move the table.
Yeah, that's
Just hey, when you plug this into your camera,
Yeah.
plug it in well. Because it needs to.
Oh, yeah. I'll do that.
Make sure it's like
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
How are you running out of sheets? We're running out of sheets of paper.
We printed out 140, 50.
Oh wait, it's not true.
Isn't that result, right?
I mean, there were more people here than you. Now is it charging?
No, I don't know why.
We're gonna have to place some people on the stairs most likely, but it's fine.
There's one behind me.
Hold on.
Okay.
Put subtitles for the video.
How about now?
Why is nothing there? Just punch it. Like, it's not turning the color. Wait, Dr. Six is morning? Okay, that's not
I might have them just sit somewhere and start recording, but it's not going to be good quality. I mean, it's in 2 points. I've been big.
Hey, back, put it on the floor.
I told him that too.
What's up?
Where's Hamza?
Probably in the back. Why? What happened?
We had tripods.
No, we're not kind of like. We don't even have flyers for everybody, bro. We cannot. No.
I found an outlet back here.
No.
I can bring this.
Is it his mom and dad?
Yeah, she works for it.
She works what?
I need it.
She works for it?
she'll stand.
Go ahead.
The one back should.
But don't quote me on it. Oh, he's right here.
Is it because
Hey, right here. Comes they wants to.
The speaker, Johnson, someone that works with her. Yeah.
For her.
She wants to get in.
All right. Keep the cash and then hand it to me afterwards. The power plugs.
That's not actually power.
Oh. Sammy. One like further down over here.
Oh,
So
there was one right there.
Oh, okay.
I'll try it.
Ooh, I can punch this back too.
Yeah.
So where's the table back? Here, push this table back.
I need like one more.
Go.
You need an extension cord? Actually, yeah. Is there an extension cord for that?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And then actually, Sammy, if you want,
But
you can have one right here.
yeah, okay. Do I just press this button when it's in video mode?
Just start with 1 or 2 minutes till we start.
Yeah.
1 or 2 minutes till we start.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Guess we can go out. You got it? Yeah, it works.
It works?
Yeah.
That's good.
Where's the camera?
Oh, just leave it
Oh,
there.
no. I'm just checking it. I'm just seeing if it's gonna work.
And the other ones we can put over.
It's not.
Oh, yes.
Stop blocking me.
It's a little scene we need. We have to put it like.
We're gonna put one on the other side too, I think.
I'm seeing, man. I'm seeing. Where's the camera?
Oh,
This one? This one?
Yeah, I was seeing.
The staircase is good. Yeah.
Alright. What we're starting right now, as soon as the lights go off, what time is it that you started? 6:15 or 6:12? Almost 6:10. We have to do the intro. Yeah, hard just was up. We're about to start in a couple of minutes.
I'd like to welcome you guys all
You're not
to
just saying
our first
swallow.
TED Talk for Intermission. Just quick announcement before the program starts. We are recording for video, so during the speeches, if you guys could all keep a low voice and not talk at all, that'd be great.
Hello, how's it going?
Wait, where's the mic?
Wait, didn't you grab the mic?
Man. Alright, no mic, ladies and gentlemen, no mic. Hi, I'm Mohammed Mahbouba, and right here I have.
Hello, I'm Hamza Ali, and welcome to TEDxUniversityOfDetroitMercy.
Yeah.
Alright,
Wait, where are you going?
what do you mean?
Aren't you gonna introduce what TEDx is?
Oh yeah, for any successful organization and show, the audience must know where people are coming from, where the organization is coming from, why they do what they do, how they do it, and what they do.
So why is this?
Well, TED first started off as an organization in 1984, and when it got taken up by Kristen Anderson, they embellished TED as technology, entertainment, and design. TED.
That's nice. So what is how? What's going on?
Well, first before we ask how, we have to ask why. So why does TED do what they do? And TED does what they do because they take people from different disciplines and cultures and blend them all into a homogenized mixture where it's like people want to learn more about this world. And so that comes about by the art of storytelling and creating innovative ideas for people to learn about.
How is this going on? How is innovation going on?
Well, how TED works is we use the art of storytelling to create a mental model in someone's head in order to spark new ideas in a more rememberable way.
So why is this all going on? What's going on?
Well, what is going on are going to be 6 short, powerful talks.
So just 6 powerful short talks by a powerful short man.
I guess that's what it is.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker, Dr. Meryl Livesey.
I am Dr. Mara Lindsay. I'm assistant professor at the University of Detroit-Mercy. I am author on 9 peer-reviewed scientific publications. Recently received my PhD learned self-sufficiency when I had to plan and time manage my day without the help of my parents. I had to learn the determination it required to succeed academically while training at Canada's top ballet school. I also learned what true passion is. I remember preparing for a spring performance of La Sophie. I loved every second of rehearsal. I just loved the challenge of memorizing the choreography and the story, letting the emotion take over me so that when I stepped on stage, the time would fly by. Performing on stage was my very first love. Those 4 years were also the hardest 4 years of my life. I was living away from my supportive family during my formative years. I spent 4 years staring at myself in the mirror every single day, wearing nothing but a leotard and tights, always looking for something to perfect, never once accepting the fact that I might already be good enough. I also spent most of those 4 years depriving myself of the foods that I craved, which is most foods because, to be honest, I love food. Ballet is an artistic endeavor, but it is very much controlled by aesthetics. So the combination of my perfectionist personality and the requirement to have a very specific body type ate away at much of my physical body and my self-confidence until both were quite changed. I had entered ballet school full of excitement for ballet, with a self-confidence that was unshakable. But after 4 years of self-critique and unchecked perfectionism, I remember a teacher walked up to me and asked, "What happened to your vibrant passion?" It is burned out. I neglected to properly fuel my body, my self-confidence, and my passion for ballet. So in December of 2008, I had decided that it was not a mentally or physically healthy thing for me to continue to pursue a career in ballet. So I packed up my things, moved back home to Michigan, and prepared for college. The next 9 months, and really the next 4 years after that, I spent redesigning my identity. I was no longer a ballerina. I was no longer defined by my love for dance or by the way my body looked. I was lost as I entered into my first year at Kalamazoo College. I found some comfort in my science classes. I had loved math and chemistry and biology in high school, so becoming a chemistry major was the next logical step. After 2 semesters of general chemistry and getting some pretty good grades, I was approached by a professor and asked to join her research lab. I had never considered doing research before, but I figured it couldn't hurt, and if nothing else, something on my resume. So my summer after my freshman year, I joined the lab of Dr. Laura Furch, doing drug metabolism research. The thought processes and the techniques required for biochemical research were completely foreign to me. One summer, I walked into her office with some data that was completely unexpected. Dr. Furch told me that rather than the data being incorrect, it was actually telling us something that we didn't yet understand. That was an amazing moment to me. I thought I had failed. But really what had happened is an experiment that I thought had been a learning moment. Questions could be asked. More research directions could be found. I didn't have to be perfect to be a biochemist. During high school, I had loved the mental and physical challenge of learning hours of new choreography. Research became the same thing to me. All the hours of thinking of new questions to ask, new research directions to pursue. My newfound love for scientific discovery became the same thing for me. And because of this, I continued research into graduate school at the University of Illinois. There I spent 4 years developing an anti-cancer drug for clinical trials, and along the way, getting a lot of data that I did not understand at all at first. Those 4 years were spent doing so many experiments that failed. Mostly failed. Those 4 years were also the time in my life where I learned more than I ever have doing anything else. It was also during those 4 years Thank you.
Okay, I'm staying up here for now.
Wow. From ballerina, doctor of biochemistry.
Yeah.
Didn't you want to be a ballerina?
Well, yeah, I mean, I still got it. What, did you know I also used to be pre-med?
Oh, really? I heard about that other Indian kid that's doing that. Do you know him?
Yeah, Sean Oja?
Yes. Please welcome Sean Oka.
Hey guys, I'm Sean. I'm a second year at the university, and being a member of academia, being a student, one thing that I realized that a lot of my peers often bring up, a little bit too much, is existentialism. One of the most common questions you pass by the library, you're going to hear people say, why am I doing this? Why did I take this class? Why am I this major? Why? Really the question you should be asking is, why are we going to school? And a lot of times, we think that the answer is to get enlightenment, to become smarter, to gain more knowledge. But the answer really is this. Go to school, get a job. And I know this might seem crude, but let's admit, this is the reality. Only by pursuing an education can we really further our career. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this, just to reiterate that. But there is a problem with this, and it's actually created the biggest rule in academia, the biggest rule in education, the biggest problem facing the future of education. And it's this. Failure is not an option, at least in academic terms. Our schools have taught us that perfection is a 4.0. That perfection isn't chasing classes outside of what you're comfortable with. Educational culture has forced us to think that the best thing that we can do is simply succeed, but not experience failure. What I do want to say, though, just carefully here, is that I'm not saying anything against success. I want to say that the problem that we have with our culture is that we're saying that we have to avoid failure. And this created something called checkbox culture. Basically, when we decided that perfection or the betterment of a student is determined by how little failure they have, how high their GPA is, we told them that they don't have to pursue other things as hardcore. They just have to check the boxes, do what's necessary, but most importantly, not mess up. Now, interestingly enough, this was a principle that I learned very early on, and it's something that I actually owe to my ethnicity. See, I'm Indian American, as in my parents came from India, and I was born in the US. Nebraska, actually. Not a lot of people know that, but the reason I mentioned the fact that I'm Indian, and the reason it has any context whatsoever with our discussion currently, is because Indians have a certain way of interpreting that big rule. Failure is not an option. Well, for a lot of Indians, and obviously other cultures as well, but from my experience, failure, defined by a lot of my Indian friends, was specific. Failure wasn't failure to get a job. Failure was the inability to get the job, or at least a select few jobs. These jobs are engineering, finance, and of course, medicine. Now, why medicine? What's so fascinating about medicine? Why do you see so many Indian biology majors? Well, it's because growing up, there was only one recognizable Indian face on television, and it's this guy. That's right, we grew up. I can only name one role model growing up, and that's this guy, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the chief medical correspondent to CNN. Growing up, this was the guy who we were raised to be. We were programmed to chase after. We were told that if you wanted to make your family happy, if you want to make your community proud of you, you had to go and become a doctor. And how do you become a doctor? How do you beat education? By not messing up, by completely avoiding failure. So as a result, I realized that a lot of my friends were stifling themselves. I saw people who had creative ambitions, but instead were just focusing on doing the same inane school tasks. They were becoming assembly line people that I just called Indian pre-meds, because I knew so many. But for me, what I wanted was difference. I wanted to be my own person. I wanted to see and education outside of formal education. So one reason I hated school was because it lied to me. And I think it lied to all of you guys too. Because education told us that you can have an impact. The stuff that you do is going to change the world. And that's a total lie, okay? That's a total lie because you're not graded on how much of an impact you've left. You're graded on the ability to memorize terms and then regurgitate that information in a quiz, and then regurgitate that information again in a month for an exam, and then every semester you regurgitate a whole bunch of information for a final exam, which by the way are in 4 days. So I hated school and I wanted to learn things outside of it. So it's no surprise that I decided to pursue things outside of school, but still were still areas of knowledge. So in 8th grade, I learned to code. And I really liked programming because in a weird way, it allowed me to manipulate machines and at the same time bring people together. I explored the fascinating possibilities of software, of hardware, and the weird thing is it took a lot of my time. It took most of my time that I probably should have been studying because in 8th grade, I got D+ in history. And the sad thing is, that was my first D+, but it wasn't my last. I spent a lot of my time focusing on things outside of school, but I wasn't really afraid of that. Failure wasn't part of my blueprint. I didn't subscribe to that community in that sense. But moving on to high school, I decided I could pursue something beyond computer science. I looked and found entrepreneurship. See, maybe it was perfect for me that I became an entrepreneur in high school because high school education wasn't cutting it. I wanted to learn more, and I wanted to directly impact people through the businesses that I created. So specifically, I worked in social entrepreneurship, which is the idea of basically creating businesses that improve society. And I experienced a lot of success. I got to go to MIT for a month and create businesses through their infrastructure. I got to study with people that I never studied with, and I got to really create an impact on people. Does anybody know these two companies?
No.
Well, that's because they're mine. One thing about being an entrepreneur is that it really exposes you to failure. This is a real statistic. About 90% of companies fail within their first year. And that's powerful because I was not in that elite 10%. I had gotten grants, I had gotten money, but my vision, my execution, whatever it wasn't clear enough. So the impact that I wanted to leave upon people through entrepreneurship wasn't there. So I felt pretty lost. And this is also the same time that we're going to be going into senior year of high school. So all of my pre-med friends who are out there killing it, right? They're about to become doctors. All of my pre-engineering friends are about to become engineers. What was I? I was pre-nothing. I'm pre-nada. I was absolutely lost. And luckily, though, even though I wasn't a great entrepreneur, I at least maintained some of the main principles. And the biggest principle that I learned is that the best time to find solutions, the best time to explore, is when you're lost. Because there's no landmarks, there's no benchmarks. You're free to create, you're free to think. So I explored a bunch of different options. I explored tutoring, I worked as a tutor. I explored computer science further, I worked in IT. I worked as a lifeguard because it was fun. And interestingly enough, the weirdest thing that I did was I actually became a volunteer at a hospital. Not because I wanted to become a doctor, but because it was community service and I lived 5 minutes from a hospital. And interestingly enough, you don't know who you fall in love with. You don't know what you fall in love with doing, and that's kind of what being in a hospital did for me. I realized through my interactions, and it wasn't a single moment, it was the process of starting as a volunteer, talking to patients families, talking to doctors, having staff encourage me, having staff teach me about what they do, learning about the impact, seeing the impact. I didn't fall in love immediately, but by the time I was done with senior year, by the time I was prepared to graduate, I decided, you know what, I think this is what I want to do. I had become just another Indian pre-med. Basically, the bane of my 18 years, I had ended up becoming. So then and this wasn't a self-evident thing. I really abstained from going into medicine because I was afraid of being viewed like this. But let's move on. Let's think about what I had to do, what I had to overcome. See, because the other Indian pre-meds had done something that I hadn't. They followed this rule. They had good GPAs. They took AP Sciences. They did HOSA. They volunteered. They shadowed. They'd been doing this years before I even volunteered my first time. Me, my resume, my track record was littered with failures. So how could I have ever made it? Because after all, we know that the rule, the key to being successful is to not fail. So I had to push myself. I had to examine the way that I experienced failure, and I had to look at what was I doing wrong. See, one of the big things that I did was I compared myself to people just because they were the same color as me, or because they had the same interests as me. And this created a lot of problems for me going forward. I had a fixed mindset. See, let's say me and my friend were both studying for the same test, and he studies 1 hour and I study 1 hour. Every single time my friend would know twice as much as me. And I thought, well, he's just twice as smart. And you know what? Most of my friends are smarter than me. I'm not that, But what is important to realize is that I could still beat them. I could still get my grades up. It just required me working triple the amount. So I experienced unpredicted success. And I say unpredicted because going into college saying, hey guys, I want to become a doctor, I was literally laughed at. Like literally I told my friends and they were like, sure. It was a startling experience. It kind of hurt me. And my advisor said the same thing. They said, Sean, a student with your GPA doesn't turn overnight. And it wasn't overnight. I started in the summer. I had to reevaluate what I was doing wrong. I pushed myself not just to study more, but study more efficiently. And my success was that people expected me to fail. People expected me to drop out, and I didn't drop out. I got a 4.0 my first semester. It was the complete opposite. And so I realized going into college, and now even where I stand right now, that success is just less than half the picture. In fact, if you really want to understand a little bit more about me, you should find out about what I did to kind of not only humble myself, but to teach myself. And that's about the creation of my resume. So I'm familiar, you guys all know or probably have a resume, right? What is it? It's a collection of your achievements, your accolades, your education. My resume is the opposite. It's a collection of my screw-ups. It's a collection of the things that I didn't get, the things that I lost. In my resume, I mentioned how I won a pitch competition internationally and created Virtual Lab. In my resume, I talk about how I lost that money in about 3 months. The point is that I have learned to not only embrace failure, but I've also begun to accept that it's not just part of my past, it's a permanent part of my future. And in doing so, I realized that I'm not just another indie pre-med, because I have a unique set of experiences. I have a unique set of ideals that I'd like to translate to the world. So who am I to say that, or who is anybody to say that I was programmed into this profession? Believe me, I tried 20 different careers, and I only ended up at this one because I can't think of anything else to do. Going forward, though, I do want to say this. I'm not a doctor, and I haven't still even gotten into med school. I haven't taken my MCAT yet. I haven't graduated, and there are a lot of things in between that I have yet to finish, yet to complete. Success is no means guaranteed, and that's not the way that I'm looking at it. 10 years from now, I might not be seeing patients. The one thing that is certain is failure, and this isn't meant to demotivate me or demotivate you. The idea behind this is the fact that you have to know that you're going to stumble. You have to acknowledge the fact that you're not going to get 100 on every exam. And you have to be able to say, okay, I'm not flawed, I'm just capable of improvement. I wasn't a bad student, I just had to become a better one. So let's evaluate this rule. Failure is not an option. I disagree. Failure is absolutely an option. And the reason I say this is because failure is equivalent to exploration. And exploration cannot occur without failure. So the fact that I was given the opportunity to fail, the fact that I wasn't given a blueprint, the fact that my interests in classes weren't manufactured to go into a career, only then was I able to find a career that I wanted to do. But as I said, you know, I'm not just an Indian doctor, I'm just not an Indian pre-med. This is a universal problem. As I said, this is the biggest problem in academics, not just in the Indian community. A lot of communities do this, especially immigrant communities. So we have to go in and say that, listen, creating these monoliths by which we raise our children is not setting them up for success. We're setting them up for a life of insecurity, an inability to see themselves as growing individuals. We're putting our kids at risk by taking them from it. So to conclude, I'm Indian, yes. I'm Hindu, I speak Hindi, and my mom cooks a mean butter chicken. There isn't anything that I would trade for being Indian. And yeah, I'm also pre-med. In the same way that I wouldn't trade being Indian for anything, I don't think I wanted to spend my life doing anything else. And I'll do whatever it takes to pursue that passion. But I want you guys to understand that this guy is not the reason why. Sanjay Gupta is a great guy. He's smart, he's intelligent, and in fact, I met him this summer. And I told him, you know what, dude, I want to become a doctor. And he kind of looked at me like, of course. And I know it's too late to say to him now, but I want to say it's not because of you, man. That's nothing against you, but it's not because of who you were or what you represented to my community or to my group of people. It's because I was given the option to fail. I was given the option to pursue 20 different careers, and in doing so, I was preparing myself for the one that I think I was made for. And this is something I want you guys to all understand as well. Right now, you guys are all holding yourselves back. You guys are all focusing too much on just getting into the career. You guys are not focusing on experiencing the wide spectrum of growth that you can have. So I encourage you to go outside your comfort zone. A 3.7, a 3.3 will not kill you. It might kill your chance of getting into med school, but that's okay, because you don't want to just get into med school. You want to become the best person you can be. Thank you.
He rehearsed a lot last minute, like he was effing up a bit, and then like he had so many slides, we like cut it down and stuff. Oh really? Yeah, I think he did really good. That was cool. Yeah.
Hello guys, nice to meet you again. If we have some more people a little bit running late, so if you guys in the center could scoot in and get rid of the empty seats in between you guys, so it'd be easier for them to come take a seat and take the ride. Thank you.
The CEO. I think CEO of Flowwater.
Wow. That was another meeting.
Hey, Moyman, I have a question. Do you have your Detroit passport at all?
My Detroit passport, I don't know what that is.
No, I'm talking about the Detroit passport for self-sufficiency for the people.
Alright, where can I get that?
Well, our next speaker, Cheryl P. Johnson, will tell us more about that.
For almost 29 years now, I have had the pleasure, and I do mean pleasure, in serving an amazing social impact organization here in Detroit, COTS. COTS provides an array of services and housing opportunities for the most vulnerable people in our community, homeless men, women, and children. A few years ago, something startling began to happen at COTS that gave us reason to pause and literally hit the reset button on our services and who we would serve, here's what we saw. Two things, and they're very much connected. We were hearing parents in the shelter talking about their experience of being homeless as a child in the shelter. That means a generation ago, they were in the shelter. Now later on, they're bringing in their children. Something was wrong with that. Here's the other thing that connected with that. On any given day with a family, you have two generations, a child and a parent. But we were starting to see more than two generations in one family represented. In fact, one time I can remember 4 generations of one family in the shelter. This is great-grandparent, grandparent, parent, and children. So the one thing I can say, we did some hard work in making sure that people were housed. That was great. We could check off that box. But the thing that we did not pay attention to and focus on was poverty. And that's the root cause of homelessness. So here's what we did. We hit the reset button, and we did major transition in our organization. The first thing we did was we transitioned the emergency shelter to serve families only. And here's why. If we're going to get in front of this and have an impact on this issue of poverty, not just in this generation, but beyond, we've got to focus all of our resources, all of our efforts have to be focused on the family. So we transitioned to a family-only shelter 5 years ago on January 1st. The other thing that was really critical for us was the methodology. How are we going to transition people out of poverty? How are we going to get them to self-sufficiency? I'm glad you asked. And here's how we do it. We have a theory of change and it's evidence-based. It's called our passport to self-sufficiency. It's based on mobility coaching, mentorship, and collaborative partnerships. Our passport starts with when families come into our emergency shelter, we begin engaging them in setting goals in these 5 domains. These are all critical for any of us to sustain self-sufficiency. Housing, which is family stability, financial literacy, economic mobility, health and well-being, education, and then employment and career development. And here's the thing, we don't just focus in one. We have to have movement in all of these particular areas. The other is mentorship. About 5 years ago, Carol Goss, former CEO and president of the Skillman Foundation, also started the Warrior Women Against Poverty, which is our mentorship arm. It is amazing when you see how this works. Mentorship provides improvement and enhancement to our family social network. I can tell you the many stories that we hear about how chaotic and tense and unhealthy some of their social networks are. Now I know you're looking at that picture and wondering, like, why is that man back there in the middle? I'm going to introduce him to you in a minute. On one occasion, we had an event. Every other month, on a Saturday, we come together with our mentees and our mentors for an event that's focused on those 5 domains that I shared with you, and sometimes just to have fun. So Dr. Linda Price, former president of Marygrove College, who is a warrior woman, opened up her home. And we had that afternoon what we call the art of tea. We exposed our families to enjoying tea and what that could mean for them. They had a great time. On the way home, one of the mentees is in the car with her coach, and she begins to cry. And the coach looks at her and asks, "What's wrong?" And here's what she said, it still gives me goosebumps today. She said, I've never been in a space with a lot of women where there was not fighting or where there was not some kind of drama going on. She had experienced this safe place with people that care for her, people that were supporting and behind her. I can't tell you the influence or the impact that that will have, not only for her, but the way she engages her children. We also have collaborative partnerships. What COTS does well is housing. But these other areas, education, economic mobility, health, and well-being, those are not our sweet spots. But we have amazing partners, collaborative partners that work with us to make sure that we keep the family at the center of it all. And every now and then, we have a family that has an issue that comes up that literally derails them. Just like a wound, when there is a cut, blood rushes to that to bring the healing. Our partnerships come together to make sure that healing also has a two-generational. That means for us that while our parents are working on their goals, our children also have their own unique goals that they're working on. I remember on one particular occasion, I was in my office, and a young man, 7 or 8, knocked on the door, and he's standing there with his mobility coach. And he says to me, and he was very proud, he says, Miss Johnson, I know the difference between a need and a want. And I thought to myself, I know a lot of adult people who have not yet gotten that together. Here he was able to articulate, because he had just come from his financial literacy class, and he's talking about the difference between a need and a want. Imagine him going to the store with his parent, and they're shopping, and she reaches for something, and he looks at his mom, and he says something like, Mom, do we need that, or do we want it? Right? There's a motivation in that. He's motivating her, and she's also learning the motivation. Brandon, so remember that face that you saw in the middle of that sea of women? So Brandon came into our emergency shelter 2016. He's a single dad with 2 children. Brandon was struggling. He was broken. He was bruised. He met his mobility coach. Brandon worked really, really hard. It took him 5 months in the emergency shelter to land housing. But here's Brandon's, what we call his dashboard. So he started there and he continued to work after he landed in housing. This is a list of every last one of Brandon's goals. The day he started and the day he completed. What was important for Brandon was education. He wanted to exceed in school and to do well. And he pushed, and with the help of his mentor and with the help of his coach and all of his support system, in May of 2019, Brandon will get his master's degree. We are so excited and happy for Brandon. But he wasn't done there. Brandon said, I don't want just a job, and he has a great job right now that supports him well. He wants a career. Brandon said, I want to be an attorney. And he knew nothing about how to figure that out in his life, and so his coach literally took him to Wayne State, where he went to apply. And a few months ago, he received his letter saying that he could start in the fall of this year in law school. So here's the thing about the wonderful things that are happening in Detroit, and I am so excited about the renaissance and the great things that are happening for all of us. But I'm more concerned and focused on people that may not get that opportunity. And so our goal and our commitment is to make sure every family has an opportunity to succeed. And we do that one family at a time. Thank you.
I have to wait for him to turn it off. Why do you keep zooming in, man?
Oh, okay.
Don't see it.
Okay, all right. My bad, guys.
Alright, how about a 5-minute break? 7. Alright, 10-minute break. Please use the restrooms outside. Situate. We'll be back.
Yeah, sure. Hold on, let me
Just keep that on the chair.
Okay. I'll show. I was gonna put it around.
Rich Mile, yeah. Rich Mile. Bro,
Okay. I'm gonna put stand down.
and stop zooming in. Look, I saw you zoom into. I was trying to ask a question, and then you zoomed in, and then I was trying to answer that. I was going to answer. It's fine. The website was super hard to hear. It was fun, but now it's fine. Damn it, Farhad.
My bad, guys. I've been holding it the whole time. No, they're watching right now. Sammy's gonna say hi. Say hi to the people.
Sometimes. Yeah. You got that? Bro, just keep it on the chair.
Oh, okay, nah, I wasn't showing.
Keep it on the chair. It's a 10-minute intermission for a reason.
How's everything with you? I missed the phone.
I don't know for sure. Yeah, no problem. Oh yeah, yep. You got the form?
Yeah, that's my car. Right here. Make sure you don't sign over campus kitchen because then I get it.
It's an honor system anyway, don't worry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I gotta go because my parking thing doesn't even work. So, but thank you so much.
No problem, yeah, of course.
Sammy, we can hear it now. We can hear it now. Okay, well, they can hear it. Is this a picture? Alright. My phone. Definitely the Wi-Fi. Bro, I stopped. Raymond, say hi to the live stream. I told him it's my political science major over here. Someone please. This is bonus content. You guys are about to get roasted in the comments. No. Guys, are we streaming good? We're trying our best. Out here. My arms hurting. I hope you don't like bottled water. It's my bicep exercise right here. I'm trying out here. Sorry for the laughs. Yeah. They're just too funny.
Stop laughing.
They're just too funny.
No, don't show me.
Welcome to the vlog. Put someone's face up. Thank you, Oma. Dex, are you watching this? Quality. Roommate. What's good? Dex. I hope you're watching. His name is John now. Now it's good too. Now it's John again too. Good vibes at the TED Talks. Boss, say what's up, yo. Let's go stand for the TED Talks, dude. Whoever's what's up, Oma? Shout out to Oma for being here. We really out here, 5 year peers. We out here. No, you're not on it. I put the front camera on. Poojan, say hi to the live stream. What's up, guys? Yeah.
Oh my god. He's having too much fun.
I got 45 people watching me, right? Yo, Vishnu, what's up? Say hi to the live stream. What's up? We got the question moderator Sammy out here.
Yeah, he got hacked.
That was me, bro. Live stream Inception out here. Live stream Inception, baby. We're trying. Yo, we got our 6'2" friend over here, Jay. Tallest Indian kid I know.
You don't know this? I'm a bouncer. I'm a fucking bouncer. You better have your ticket.
We're trying to keep it entertaining. Don't listen to Jay. He's ruining the vibes. But we're trying out here, guys. Yeah, so right now we're in intermission. We'll be back soon, guys. Let's take a break. Take it all in, what we heard so far.
Yeah, could we change the
We got Sean out here. Yeah.
No? Okay, that's fine.
Stop doing stuff in the comments.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Stop.
Okay.
Literally stop. I don't even have a phone and I know what you're fucking doing.
Oh my god, my bad.
I don't have anything on me and I know what you're doing. Just stop, bro.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to keep this as clear as possible just for extra credit.
I got you.
Ask the question. So far, what are the names of our three speakers? No. Q4. No. I say question 4. No. Say question 4 and then make a question afterwards. So far, what have been the names of our three speakers? I want to see if they remember. So far, what are the names? So far, you put so far. Kind of English.
That's my job, bro. I got it.
My job.
I'm like,
You're hired again.
Wait. Sammy? Yeah, but
Let's just watch out.
someone else was Sammy.
There was a fake Samuel next to him.
If I find it, bro, he's going down. Yeah, I reported him. Really?
So he's boarded.
I was like, he's harassing me.
No.
As in Sammy.
When are we starting up again?
We're paying for an expensive
7-Eleven right now.
And it's just so. Can we switch spots? Can I do something else? Something else. Just stay there. I'm not just saying 30 seconds before.
What's up, Denny?
I got it.
You enjoying the TED Talk so far? Gotcha. It's gonna be like an inside joke. Someone run in front of the license, so I just did this in front of it. But someone's like, dude, everyone's laughing because Sammy just got. You're like, please stop. Yeah. You go.
The biggest inside joke.
I know. Can I see what it looks like? Yeah. How did they make an account like that?
They blocked the account. It was pretty.
One of our friends has 1,000 subscribers, so that means you could, if you have at least 1,000, you could start a live stream.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
I don't know. It's like a Mario Kart.
How do I see
someone?
How do I see the whole history? How do I see the whole history of the chat?
No. So someone was.
No,
it's just no. I can't. No, I can't. Has it just been facing you that whole time? Huh? Is the live stream just been looking at you the whole time? I was looking this way, but for Livesy, it was over here. Like, oh, I got you. Yeah, but people couldn't hear it. Oh, that's. I remember it.
I'm doing my best.
Yeah, you were just standing.
Bro, he's the only one who's. They said the good quality live stream is terrible.
Yo.
Bro, right now it's terrible.
Oh, no.
No, in the middle.
No, wait.
No, back there. Like, you couldn't hear anything. Bro, because the Wi-Fi is bad here, that's why.
You got a message for
Everyone else is saying it can hear everything
You
clear.
have a message for Big Sammy?
That was not a good
Guys,
move.
prove to a boss that the volume is good and that you can hear everything clearly. And the quality is good too. If not, we'll make adjustments. We got this. Ask them. That's what they say.
Yo, I have to check all the chats.
This man's complaining. Man, just keeps complaining. Yeah. No, they said they can hear you fine.
Do you know how to check all the messages?
Yeah.
You can just swipe up and swipe down.
What? So only Tony can do it?
Yeah.
Are you
Do
sure?
what? Delete the comments?
No. Find all the comments.
Oh.
Because we're gonna need this to see the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Go over there.
I'll go over there. Are we starting up?
Am I sitting here? I can just. Oh wait. Am I like putting my legs between the GoPro? Yeah.
Do you want me to move that to down here or?
No, don't move it. Don't move it. No, it's okay. You can move it. I'll just put it right here. It's perfect. Yeah, this is good.
It was a good speech.
Hey, thanks,
Yeah,
man.
I think rehearsal.
You don't have to say that.
The rehearsal definitely paid off.
Huh?
I think the rehearsal definitely paid off.
Oh yeah, dude. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
man.
no problem.
Oh my god. Oh, is it a live streaming?
Yeah.
No way.
Guys, say hi
So
to.
people are hearing this.
Yeah.
Everybody here for
guys know
extra
what this
credit.
is?
Everybody here for extra credit. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Great speech.
If the phone's on the die,
Yeah.
charge up.
Listen, we did this. Your grade.
Just keep it
We
plugged in.
did-
Okay, I got you.
We not having to watch.
This guy's managing the slides. Kunal, my boy.
You already said your grade. We did this.
You want to be on the live stream?
Hey, every point matters. Okay. All right. Really? Oh, thanks, man.
Let's go. You literally explained the whole immigrant community. Like arrows are the same way. You know?
No, that's why I had to add that last
That's
last
very
part.
funny.
For us, it's lawyer, not finance.
Lawyer, yeah. I know a lot of Arab lawyers. I always wondered why.
Yeah,
I guess
It's engineer, lawyer, doctor.
Yeah.
Top 3.
Yeah, man.
Hey, what a beautiful speech.
It's this one, not that one. Oh, by the way, guys, make sure that we're together afterwards. We're gonna take pictures. Bobby and everybody's gonna take like a picture.
The board and then them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Nitish, I don't know if it's charging. Nitish, I don't know if it's charging or not. It didn't vibrate or anything.
Swipe down. No. Swipe on the right. Come on.
Oh.
Bro, to get to the Wi-Fi setting, the control center. See if it's charging in controls. Yeah.
Oh.
See if it's
I
charging.
forgot about that. Yeah, it is.
Come on, man.
I forgot.
I feel so long.
Started that.
We're about to start again. Just quick reminder, no flash photography, and if you could put your phone on silent.
Thank you. Abraham.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, are you still tired?
Yeah, a little bit. But like I think we're
You'll be
good.
fine.
Yeah, I'll be
You'll
good.
All right, how about I tell you if I give you $10, would you touch a stingray?
A stingray. You mean a
Stingray.
ray that sting?
Yup.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
All right, how about I tell you I know a guy that did his whole PhD thesis about stingrays.
Are you talking about Gregory Grabowski?
Yes,
John
I
Deere?
am. Dr.
Through the animal diversity. Now, the thing is that they discover, okay, that they're really going to start talking and learning about subjects that have nothing to do with their professional background that they want to pursue. Okay? So they quickly discover, you're going to learn about animal diversity. You're going to learn about all of these dissection tools. Okay? And then you're going to go ahead and have buckets of preserved specimens. Okay? It's not the tooth. Okay? It's not, okay, the specimen, the pathological specimen everybody's been waiting for, and it's definitely not a cadaver. It's a worm, okay? It's the grasshopper, it's the crayfish, okay? It's the sea star, not the starfish, right? Okay? And then you finally end up with the rat. Okay? So we have these noble pursuits, but what happens is we run those gambit of all of those different organisms, and we start out with general biology and those dissections. Okay? Now, much to our what we discover is that, what are we doing with this? Okay? Why are we studying these animal diversities and what's happening here? Well, the thing is this, okay? We're beginning to learn, okay, where we fit in this whole scheme, where we fit in the ecology, okay, where we fit in evolutionarily wise. Okay? Remember, okay, what we're learning here is that we are humans, and we're part of this organismal diversity that's part of the Earth's bio. And so what we're learning about here is this. We're learning that there are similarities between us and some of these organisms. Okay, we're learning this at an anatomical level, at a physiological level. Okay? Well, what's also happening here is that we're learning in a very simplistic manner. We're starting out with that worm. And then what happens is we get more and more complex. And as we're getting more and more complex, we're going through the course, but we're also not only going through the course's time clock, we're also going through evolutionary time clock. And what we're really developing is what we see here. Okay, next slide, please. We're developing our critical thinking skills. Okay, dissections, okay, what they're doing is that it's a way of getting your gloved hands dirty and developing your critical thinking skills. What we're doing here is developing concepts that you're going to be using and utilizing in your more advanced classes in your professional schools. Okay. Now, I also teach advanced physiology. I also teach the graduate level physiology and pathophysiology for our College of Health Professions. And time again, I see all of the critical thinking skills and all of the concepts that are being developed in those dissections being utilized in these professional settings. Now, what's happening here, as I said, We start out with a very simplistic organism. We're looking at different type of organ relationships. We're doing it at a very simple level with the worm. And as we go ahead and develop, we're looking at these more and more over into greater, more complexity. And what results is in something like the heart. Now, when everybody gets to the heart, everybody's like, how do we do critical thinking with the heart? Well, it's all critical thinking. So if you go ahead and everybody in this room probably went ahead and got the sheep heart. So when you have that sheep heart, you look at it and you say, how do I deal with this? Well, we know that the left ventricle is the one that has to push the blood through the whole body. And therefore, it has to work harder than the right, which means it's going to have a thicker wall. So now we can distinguish the right from the left. But the thing is that everything on the left side of the body occurs in twos. Everything on the right occurs in threes. So now that we know that this thicker walled ventricle, okay, is in the left heart, we know that's going to push blood out the aorta, but we know that the associated valve, because it's on the left, is your bicuspid. We know that the blood that's going to leave, okay, and pass into the aorta is going to go to the right. When it goes to the right, it's going to go through 3 blood vessels: the brachiocephalic, the right carotid, and the right subclavian. It's going to go to the left. It's going to go through 2, okay? The left common carotid and the left subclavian. These are all concepts, okay, that you just start out as a freshman, and you start putting these together. But then what happens is that you're going to see these again in your advanced physiology class, your advanced anatomy class, and then you're going to see them in the professional school that you're going to go to. And it's going to be much easier because you're going to have these skills and you're going to be ready to go. Next slide. Now, I experienced this. My own personal experience is with stingrays. As a freshman, I went through the animal diversity, and I, at that time, couldn't even imagine that I would be working with Dasiatus sabina, the Atlantic stingray. Now, what happened is that experience equipped me. I knew the difference amongst the chondrichthyes. I knew the difference between a shark, a stingray, and a skate. I knew what their internal anatomy was. I knew what their physiology was at a foundational basic level. But then what I did is I looked at this organism and I said, I want to know about the morphology of the inside of the structure. So what I did is I did some scanning electron microscopy, and then I went ahead and looked at the epithelium, and then the arrows on the bottom. You can see our blood vessels. So I understood the vasculature. Then I did some transmission electron microscopy. What I did over here was looked at the cells and saw how they were connected. What were the junctions between them? What was the difference between their different membranes? And then what I did is took this and did some electrophysiologic work. Now, the electrophysiologic work I did with this was investigating where ions are moving. So I investigated not only what ions are moving and in which direction, but how they're interacting with each other. Now, you might wonder, like, well, what's the contribution to that? Okay, what does that have to do with the grand scheme of things? Okay, well, what it does is this. Next slide, please. It goes ahead, and it's a model system for understanding how cystic fibrosis works. So who would have thought, okay, me as a freshman, would have gone ahead and gone through this diversity experience, and then go ahead and wind up getting my PhD investigating the morphological and electrophysiologic features of the Atlantic stingray's alkaline gland. Now, cystic fibrosis is a disease that afflicts the lungs. And so what happens here is that people have a problem moving chloride. And if you have a problem moving chloride, you can't hydrate your mucus very well, and then your airways get clogged up. But a lot of people don't realize that there's other problems with cystic fibrosis. And my model system is dealing with the pancreatic duct that is occurring, okay, in humans. So what happens is that this pancreatic duct is doing the same things that the alkaline gland is doing. It's moving chloride through something called the CFTR, the cystic fibrosis transmembrane regulator, and then that's allowing bicarbonate to move with it. What's happening is that not only do you have lots of fluid moving through that duct, But what also happens is you neutralize the acids of the stomach, and then you allow the enzymes of the body to work. So it's very difficult to study the pancreas. It's very difficult to study what's happening in the pancreatic duct because it's in humans and it's small and it's difficult to get. What happens though is using a model system, what's happening is that now we can look at it and use it to study different drugs and how they interact to help people who have cystic fibrosis. Now, this all began with developing critical thinking skills. It all began really investigating the animal diversity in dissecting freshman lab specimens. And what happens is that you will start getting this training in critical thinking, but it's not technical training, okay? So technical training is just doing. This is critical thinking. This is taking it that extra step further. So when people enter these professions, you're not going to be a technician and do technical work. You're going to be doing investigative work. That's the driving force of medicine. That's the driving force of all the different careers that people want to pursue in healthcare. So why do we do dissections? Why do we go through this? It's the beginning. It's the practice. It's the beginning of something that you're going to develop further and further and further until ultimately you're going to come up with something and look at things differently and say, hey, this organism does this better, this one does this better, this one doesn't do it at all. But what does it mean, and how can we use that to understand medicine better? Okay? Thank you.
Wow. Stingrays? I think you should touch one now.
I'm done. Yeah, I have a question. Do you smoke at all?
No, I don't. Why?
But you drink water from a water bottle, right?
Sometimes.
Well, I'm here to tell you that might be the biggest mistake you've made.
Why? What do you mean?
Well, our next speaker, Rich Razgapis, is going to tell us more about that. So why don't we give him a applause?
You mean Roz?
Oh yeah, it's Roz.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's have Roz.
So how shocking is that? It's like a little mortifying, right? So what's crazy is a few decades ago, that would not have been abnormal at all. In fact, it would have been not unexpected to see someone speaking in front of you smoking a cigarette. And so today I want to talk to you about why bottled water is the new cigarette, and it's killing us slowly. Now, before I begin, let me iterate for everybody. My objective today is to show awareness around it is not to vilify, condemn, critique single-use plastic water bottle consumers or cigarette smokers, or if you're a real hellraiser, both. So my guess is that probably 90% of you in this room do one of those two things periodically. Now, what's interesting about cigarettes and bottled water is that there's a lot of parallels between the two. Decades ago, cigarette companies came up with a product that they sold on taste and sex appeal and health. In fact, that's a real ad from decades ago that suggests that more doctors smoke Camels than any other brand of cigarette. But what's funny about that, and also kind of amazing, is that when you look at bottled water advertising and how that has developed over a period of many years, it's much the same effect. Bottled water is being sold based on taste, health, it's sexy, but it's also really, really bad for the environment. It's also really bad for our health and physiology. So the problem with single-use plastic water bottles There's several, and I'm going to walk through these for you. The first one is the amount of plastic destruction that is left in the wake in the form of bottles that are not recycled. In the United States, bottled water is a $20 billion a year industry, and we consume 50 billion single-use plastic water bottles every single year. And what's almost equally as amazing as that is that 80% of them don't get recycled. So what's that mean? That means that 40 billion single-use plastic water bottles end up on our oceans, lakes, rivers, and landfills. Now, in addition to them ending in our environment, which I'm going to come back to in a minute, German researchers in 2013 did a takedown on what is actually in the water, in the plastic bottles themselves that contain drinking water. And one of the things that they found is that these plastic water bottles tested in 2013 actually contain over 24,500 chemicals. That's more than 3 times the number of chemicals that are in cigarettes. And so now finally we're drinking the very plastic that we're putting into the environment and polluting. So a recent world media study showed that 94% of tap water now contains microplastics. So how does this happen? Well, you start to add out worldwide the hundreds of billions of single-use plastic water bottles that end in oceans, lakes, rivers, and landfills. And then you factor in the fact that plastics don't biodegrade. How do they degrade? Photodegrade. What's that mean? It means one piece turns into 2, turns into 4, 8, 16, 32, until it comes down to microparticulate and nanoparticle size. And then what happens? Ends up getting into our ecosystem. And in the ecosystem, it becomes a part of the aquatic life, and then it eventually makes its way into drinking water. That's one of the reasons why 94% of tap water actually contains microplastics. Now, you might think, well, it's okay because I drink bottled water, so I might be contaminating the environment, putting plastics in the environment, but I'm not actually drinking them. This same Orb Media study showed that over 90% of plastic water bottles contain microplastics as well. So in addition to 24,500 chemicals that exist in single-use plastic water bottles, over 90% contain microparticulate, and those microplastics actually tested out to be higher than in tap water, to the point that there are over 314 pieces of microplastics per liter of bottled water. Staggering. And it's even in our air. So what's incredible to me about this is as I'm preparing for this presentation, every day there's a new headline about the amount of microplastics that are not only in our water, but at this point now in our air. And this is a study sample that was done from a remote region in France in the Pyrenees Mountains. So I hope you're wondering, at least at this point, okay, rats, if bottled water is so bad and it's terrible for the environment, and it's bad for our health, and it's hellish too, but for our health, why do so many people consume it? Why is it such a big consumptive product? Well, the fundamental reason is that consumers don't like and they don't trust the tap. Okay, I'm going to give a little bit of context to this. So in 1974, next slide, there's this thing that was enacted called the Safe Drinking Water Act. This was an important piece of legislation. It's what helped form governmental policy around what is safe what are safe, allowable number of contaminants that can enter our drinking water system. Now, what's problematic about this 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act is that it has not been radically updated in the last 45 years. And in fact, today, there are over 60,000 known chemicals in use in the United States. Yet only 100 of those 60,000 chemicals are covered in the Safe Drinking Water Act. And in fact, the last time that that was amended as it relates to the chemicals was the year 1996. So we live in a country where we've made a fundamental decision that chemicals are safe unless they're proven to be bad. And that has devastating consequences and repercussions to the waterways. Next slide. So imagine it's 2009, or imagine it's 2019. This is an image from 2009. And you're driving a car, and that car that you're driving today has the exact same basis for its safety regulations as was developed 30, 40, 50 years ago. No analog braking system, no electronic stability control, no airbags, certainly no driving and texting laws, given that mobile phones didn't even exist many decades ago. And that's part of the fundamental problem that we have in the United States today, is that we are driving a vehicle called tap water that has been regulated based on standards that were widely developed decades ago and have been not yet radically changed to be current. Next slide. So why don't we go back to the tap? There's three fundamental reasons why. First one is knowledge. Knowledge really is a lot like cigarettes, right? When you think about why do people smoke in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? A lot of people just didn't realize what are the deficits to tobacco usage over a long period of time. As I said before, there's over 7,000 known chemicals in cigarettes. In plastic water bottles, there's over 24,500 known chemicals, and this ends up being a carrier. Next slide. Second one is taste. So, chlorine is a really essential part of our tap water supply. Why is that? Well, it safely delivers the water to us in a disinfected state that makes its way from the municipal waterways, the municipal water plant, into our homes. There's a big problem with chlorine though, and that's the taste of it. People do not like the taste of chlorinated water, and furthermore, chlorine ends up being toxic to intestinal flora. So the very good bacteria that are in your stomach often get decimated over time with the addition of chlorine. And finally, this last one is trust. Now, you probably thought that I was going to lead with lead. And I will mention lead quickly, next slide please, because 63% of Americans are greatly concerned about the quality of their tap water. And it's hard not to talk about lead, next slide, because in the United States, there are only 15 states, for example, that require mandatory lead level testings in its public schools. That's not just sad, that is a fucking tragedy. And that's something that we need to change. Next slide. There's something else. Glyphosate, which is weed killer on tap. So in 2015, the World Health Organization actually finally recognized that glyphosate is probably carcinogenic to humans. What is glyphosate? It's a chemical that is most commonly known as an ingredient in the branded herbicide called Roundup. And ironically enough, the very first commercial usage of glyphosate was in 1974, the same year that the 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act was enacted. Next slide. As part of this, there's a lot of data that suggests out there that there's a positive correlation between an increase in disease and our increased glyphosate usage across the United States. So all this sounds really pretty tragic and pretty terrible, both from a tap water perspective as well as a bottled water perspective. But there is some light, and there's some hope, and there's some potential, but it requires us to take action. Next slide. There's 4 steps to a solution. Number 1, ban. Number 2, legislate. Number 3, tax. And number 4, purify. If we do these 4 things, we can radically change the way that we consume water. We can radically improve the tap water in the United States. And we can also radically reduce single-use plastic water bottle waste. Let's go through these real quickly. Number 1, ban. We need to ban herbicidal contaminants that are decimating our soil. Literally today, we are drinking tap water that has had decades worth of herbicides, pesticides, pharmaceuticals, and other agricultural products that are dripping through the waterways, and we are literally in the process of creating a toxic cocktail by which we're drinking through our tap water lines. That needs to stop, and the way that we stop it is by banning herbicidal products that contaminate the soils, that have all sorts of chemicals in it that are ultimately pollutants into our waterways. Number 2, we need to radically update the 1974 Safe Drinking Water Act. And then we need to apply those resources to water infrastructure and improve them so that we can deliver higher quality tap water to Americans throughout the United States. Number 3, tax. Not normally in favor of increasing taxes. However, something interesting happened when we started taxing cigarettes. So if we were to look at an adjusted average of cigarette taxes across all the states and do a blend of that across all 50 states, you come up with a tax rate that's around 44.3%. What does that tax money do? It goes back to actually funding anti-smoking campaigns and also some of the treatments as it relates to it, and also alternative therapy, for example. That's the exact similar line of thinking that we should be applying to bottled water products. If we were to take a similar tax basis, this is applied to cigarettes, and apply that to bottled water, we would generate over $8 billion a year in revenue that could be used not only to clean up the single-use plastics that we're wasting into the environment, but also by improving our waterways and testing in the legislation that's required to support this strategy. Next slide. And finally, purify. So with today's technology, you can actually take the water that's being delivered to your tap and improve it dramatically by adding filtration and purification technology onto it. And not only is this important as a means by reducing our consumption and our usage of single-use plastic water bottles, but it's also important for us to do as a means and by way of improving the quality of the water that we're ingesting that's free of microplastics, chlorine, pharmaceuticals, herbicides, pesticides, and related. Finally, what can you do individually? It requires us to take action. This is a problem that can and must be solved. But in order to solve it, it requires that we do something. And it requires that we do something together. Number 1, make a conscious effort. Just be mindful about the ways that you can start to change your behavior from single-use plastic water bottles to something else that comes out of the tap. And that mindfulness over time will change the course of time so that we end up on the right side of history. Number 2, contact legislators and vote accordingly. These laws that we're talking about are the fundamental basis of the safety and the safe provision of tap water, not only to all the men and women that are in this room, but also our children. And that is a fundamental responsibility that all of us have. Number 3, use your voice to drive the change that you want. Probably one of the most powerful ways that you can do that is with your pocketbook. So support businesses that provide alternatives to single-use plastic water bottles and that do provide filtered or purified water on tap or alternatives to plastic. And then finally, number 4, sign up for our pledge on crushplastic.com, which we will use as a way to advocate and deliver a pathway for change in the way that we consume and drink water across the United States. And in the process of that, I hope that we can accomplish the vision and the mission of ending single-use plastic water bottle waste. Thank you.
I know. Wait, isn't the clicker working?
Yeah, I know.
Sammy, how's it?
I would have done it. I did the same thing. But I just did it. Alright, now it's back to my own last speaker. That's all I'm saying.
I would have never used a water bottle again.
Yeah.
What did you learn?
I learned a lot. 5 TED Talks. It's all my head.
Oh, really? I can test you about any TED Talk right now, you'll get 100%.
Yeah, I wouldn't right now though.
See, you didn't learn how to learn.
Yeah. You know anyone who can teach me how to learn?
I sure do. Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Matthew Mayo.
That was funny.
That was good, yeah.
That was good.
That was a good transition.
Funny.
They spelled it wrong.
Oh, it's after my way.
Yeah, I know. It's about learning to lead.
Backstage the whole time trying
Learn
to
to
remember how many methylene groups there are between the phosphorus and the nitrogen in glyphosate. There's one. I'm very, very thankful to have the chance to talk to you today about something that's very, very close to my heart. The reason why I'm speaking to you today, I think the reason why I was chosen to give this talk is because because I've made a career of learning, and I kind of want to pass on some of the things that I've learned about that, no pun intended, to you. Next slide. I have a little outline here. We're going to talk a little bit about what learning actually is, what the literature tells us it is, especially when it comes to behavioral science. We're going to talk a little bit about some lies you've been told, probably since you were very, very young. And then maybe spin that around. Let's not do the negative, let's end on the positive and talk about what some good learning strategies would look like. We'll call them characteristics. And we're going to talk a lot, like many of our speakers actually have tonight, about metacognition. So metacognition is when you think about the way that you're thinking. It's very, very important that you think about what you're thinking. Even if you have to take a little bit of a break, stare at a blank wall, as I sometimes say, sip a cup of hot tea, and actually think about what's going through your brain at that moment. It's really, really important. Next slide. So what is learning? Research shows that most learning takes place outside of the classroom. Well, that's pretty good since I'm a teacher. It's always good to read that in the literature. But it's true. Learning is highly emotional. Everybody remembers the fishing trip with grandma, or like cooking cookies with grandpa or something like that. No one ever remembers how many methylene groups there are between the phosphorus and the nitrogen in the structure of glyphosate, right? It also needs struggle. This is very, very important because you get a lot of students and a lot of teachers that talk and they say, oh, the most important part about my education was that flash. I woke up one day and then I just remembered everything about dimensional analysis and I could do it in my sleep. That's not actually what learning is, at least not what the literature is telling us. The literature is telling us it's more of a gradual awakening. A couple steps every day, a couple steps every week, a couple steps every month. Think like it's hard to when you're a young person, several years or decades hence. What else is learning? Students who've actually been taught how to learn. You have to think about that for 1 second. So let's all meditate a couple seconds. Students who are taught how to learn perform better and retain better information, and most important of all, especially for someone who teaches everybody's favorite subject, organic chemistry, very early in the morning, a couple days a week, you have a healthier attitude towards your own education. Learning how to learn is a significant investment. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience, but it pays off for people who actually engage it, hopefully making things worthwhile. So my wife is a historian, and a number of years ago she introduced me to James Lowen's books. If you haven't read them, you definitely have to pick them up. So James Lowen explores all the things you've been told about American history that basically is straight up lies. And his books are very, very popular, New York Times bestseller, the national thing. What I decided to do is take a little bit of a spin and talk about some things that you've been lied to when it comes to the idea of learning. Learning is not fast. Learning takes a very, very, very long time. I'm in my mid-40s, and there's things on a near daily basis that I'm still learning. And if at any moment you, as one of my students or someone who sees me around DetroitMercy, sees me and says, that guy's got it together, you couldn't be more wrong. Because every single morning I have to do the same thing you have to do. Look in the mirror and decide to follow through and go to work that day. And if you're lucky, you choose a career where you don't have to work too hard to make that decision. Learning is very, very gradual. Knowledge is isolated facts. Oh, well, I needed to know this for this class. I needed to know this to change the tire of my car. I need to know this. No way. Everything is interconnected. Just start telling stories. That's how, you can memorize something by making up a song about it. Or go in lots of different directions. Connect things. Realize that there's lots of overlap in everything that you're learning. Expertise is inborn rather than the result of hard work. We heard in Sean's talk about what's called the growth mindset. Very, very important. Every once in a while, we go into our dark place. I'm just not good enough. It's called the imposter syndrome. It actually has a name in the psychological literature. If you don't experience that on a daily basis, I'm not convinced that you're an adult in the Western culture world at this point, okay? Everybody's better than me. Everybody's got it together. I have no idea what I'm doing. That is a very, very normal response. But it is not because someone woke up one day and figured everything out. Mostly it's because they had an attitude towards what they wanted to change that we call the growth mindset. Multitasking is the path to balance. This is the one that I struggle with the most. When I read the theory paper, it was only 2 years ago, on inattentional blindness, honestly, I almost started to cry. This paper basically said, do you realize that saying yes to everything and being busy all the time is the ultimate form of being lazy? Because you're not getting anything done. And I pretty much do that on a daily basis. From to this day, try to figure out how to manage every part of my life, and it's tough. Inattentional blindness refers to the things that we don't think about that are affecting us, and things that we think are affecting us, but they're not, right? Learning is tidy and methodical. Number one, if you have never been at a table or a desk with paper strewn all over the place, maybe an organic model kit, who knows what. Obviously, your generation, we're deciding we're going to call you the plurals. No more than 5 screens in front of you at all times, right? Phone, tablet, laptop, video game, TV at all times. These are my kids, basically, my biological children that I'm trying to raise. Learning is very, very messy. Learning is very, very messy. It takes a lot of work to get it right. And when someone tells you, oh, everything just clicks, it's easy, just do this problem and you'll be fine, then they're telling you a lie. And I think that there's a better way to look at stuff. Let's talk about what good learners do. Because the number one thing on this list is something that's very, forgive me, elemental. And that's being curious. I was just invited the other day to sit at the table with some of the big dogs at the university. And I was embarrassing myself inside my own head. Why am I here? I don't belong here. I'm just the organic chem prop. Everybody thinks I'm a young guy, even though actually I've been around at the university for almost 2 decades. And maybe that's a blessing, maybe it's a curse. But I remember being really small and always being curious about everything. And that really is the place to start. I think I saw a cartoon a couple years ago online that showed these wild little kids going into a school. And then the second panel was they were walking out all dressed in business suits, all exactly the same height, dressed the same colors, and all going together. And it just broke my heart. You have to be curious to be a learner. If there's a way you could get back that way you felt 4, 5, 6 years old when you learned about something for the first time, I don't care whether you were memorizing dinosaur names or Pokemon, it still counts as far as I'm concerned. Good learners pursue understanding diligently. It takes a lot of work to be able to learn. And you have to understand that you've got to go at it forever. And frankly, I'm getting kind of sick and tired of never give up. Everybody says that. Actually, I think you have to know when to give up. Because if you don't, then you're never going to be able to decide what's important to you. Recognize that some learning is not fun. A lot of learning is not fun, okay? A lot of it. And the man is going to constantly put blocks in front of you that you have to jump over. Here's my career in a nutshell. Okay, survived grade school, that's 9 years in one place. Up, you're a freshman all over again. Now you're in high school. You're a senior, up, a few weeks later, you're a freshman all over again. Now you're in college. Up, you're a first-year grad student, so you're still a peon. Graduate with my PhD. Up, you're a junior faculty member. You still can't sit at the big, over and over and over and over again. It really wears you down. Really wears you down. A lot of it is not fun, but that's okay, because there is a special thrill when it works. Good learners utilize failure positively. We heard a lot about failure in Sean's talk. I thought that was great. Utilizing failure because it happens to all of us on a daily basis. I'm a big fan of the philosophical method called epistemology, which refers to how knowledge is made. You have to make your own knowledge to make it work. You can't just have someone give something to you. Don't worry, Prof. Mayo, I watched a video of your lecture. I'm good to go. But did you make the knowledge yourself? Did you rewrite it? Did you write it the way you want to see it? Did you make a table? Did you think about it actively? That's what it takes to really get down and dirty with epistemology. Or you can take Professor Kogel's epistemology class. That would work too. Never run out of questions. Sometimes it breaks my heart to say, we've got to move on, guys. If it was my world, I would talk for 5 minutes in lecture and just allow you the following 70 minutes to just keep asking questions, because it's the only way that you can actually get really, really good at something. And probably most important of all, that's why it's last on the list, you got to share what you've learned. Even if sometimes people aren't willing to listen to you, sooner or later they'll get used to the way that you teach, and that's really the best way to do it. We hear all the time when we're in the academy, oh, you really don't learn stuff until you teach it. And so I tell my students, and when they ask me, what's the best way to get ready for this exam? Well, if I were you, I would pretend like you were me, write a full-length exam, and trade it with your buddies. because that's really the only way you're going to be able to get ready for the way that I'm thinking about it. Why is all this important? So this article right here in the Journal of College Science Teaching was in a box that I had to move out of my office the day that I moved into Detroit-Mercy. And it showed this classic image from the 19-teens, so 100 years ago, called The Maiden and the Witch. Do you see the young woman looking away, or do you see the old crone? Ooh. This article knocked my socks off minutes into the start of my career. This article is about education's ability to do harm. This article started with, hey buddy, how did you get over your undergrad education? And the other person's like, what? What do you mean? Well, it took me like 5 years to get over the cycle of study, divest the knowledge, get some extra sleep, eat again, study, divest the knowledge, over and over and over and over and over. And many of you are in this room and you're going to do it over and over and over. And then you're going to go to med school and you're going to do it for 4 more years. And then you're going to get a fellowship and do it for 8 more years. And when does it end? And this article ends with, boom. How are you going to get over your undergraduate education? Is it the maiden or the witch? Can it help or can it harm? Here's my attitude. When I see this quote from Piaget, a classic psychologist, I think really, really hard about who's to blame. Maybe that is a little bit of a sour note to end on. But I tend to take the blame to myself. Good leaders always take way less of the credit than they do, but way more of the blame. And if I'm the captain of my classroom, I have to think very, very hard about how to teach my students how to learn the material. Not just the material, but to teach them how to learn it. And until you really get to the point where you're learning how to learn, there may be something you're missing. I think it's important to look at this from the perspective of the real differences that we have with information flowing as fast as it is now. There isn't just a step up to learning something. You may have to unlearn something you already know. And if you don't know how to learn, or you haven't learned how to learn, that could be big trouble. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you all today.
Yeah, get a quick stretch in. My back hurts. I don't know how much.
You learn how to learn?
Yeah, I think so.
Quiz time?
I made a quiz before it.
Alright. Let's hear it. What did you learn?
I learned that, I don't just want to be a ballerina, I want to be a biochemist. And I'm also not just an Indian pre-med, I'm an Indian pre-det. And also, I learned Detroit passports. And self-sufficiency. But Mohi, I think, yeah, thank you. And I think it's quiz time for you, buddy. What did you learn?
I learned how to learn. That's indeed. And I'm never touching a water bottle ever again. And honestly, next stingray I see, I'm hugging that boy. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to give a round of applause for our speakers and our organizing members. Hamza Ali and Sean Oja, please give a round of applause.
Also, a round of applause to the developmental team, Ibrahim, Nitesh, and Kunal. They work behind the scenes. Also, another round of applause to all of you for coming and opening your minds to this TED Talk.
All right.
You guys for coming. We tried our best. We worked through it. Thank you, Sammy, for managing the comments.
Hey, Dr. Miles, thanks for the shout out. It was a really good time.
Some stuff.
Wait, are you gonna end it?
Should I end it?
Yeah.
Alright, guys, we hope you enjoyed the talk. It's definitely extra credit. That's a booster, but it's definitely more than that too. We hope you guys learn how to learn. And yeah. I'm not the one to speak for everyone. Peace out. Enjoy your Easter break and final studying. That's it. I'm ending it. Wait. I think people are still commenting.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll give you guys some time to comment, and then we'll end the stream. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Keep it going.
I'm actually. That works. I'm going to take pictures of all the speakers as well. Yes. You guys want to hang out? Yeah. Yep. Is that okay? Yes, totally. When is that?
Just gotta make sure that they answer the questions.
Yeah.
Oh, Calvin, he's gonna ask me about the live stream membership.
Very interesting.
I noticed that like in your bio, it's like basically all how to I don't know if it's lab teacher. It's not really like it says because like I saw an ad yeah.
Oh yeah, I asked him in the comments.
No, don't ask them.
Never mind.
Put it back.
I was gonna ask them like, what's the quality? Yeah, I was hoping. Wow, Red Stein, thanks for coming.
There were like two guys that came in and freaking wanted to like come for the last talk, and that's all I got to say. It might be in the back.
No.
Where's
Why are we so crazy?
Where's the tissue?
Can I make it bigger?
It's not even coming. Thanks for watching.
No, I gotta make it bigger.
I might have put it in the bag.
Oh, shit.
Did you guys see Sean?
No, he was just here a second ago. I didn't see him.
I need some good.
He's everywhere. Is there any questions on it?
They're writing their stuff.
What you do, just pull this shot off us.
There's some people that were in it that still didn't put their name back in. I think some people just left.
It's okay, we can always go back.
Yeah.
Or some people just got lucky and went in now and then put their name in.
Everyone got the right answer. We just gotta make sure we got all the people.
I saved them on that question. The organization one. COTS. Coalition of Temporary Housing. So those questions I didn't even know, like I wasn't paying attention as actually. What they said, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. It's just so family too. Yeah, after.
We have to sell some shit. Who's the best salesman? Me? No. Oh, I got some videos, actually. Yeah. Let's go. Come help me.
I'm not a good seller.
Huh?
You can help me sell, right?
I'll try in just a second.
Right now.
What are you saying to them? What are you saying to them? Sean will be good.
Yeah, I can't get a hold of her. Dude, Cheryl just like dipped. Yeah, here.
Oh, they're missing out on the speakers.
Yeah. I actually asked her.
Okay, end the live stream anyway. Yeah, just do it. No one's putting in.